I got home from the shop around 6:15, dragging the smell of burnt oil and rust into the house with me. My back hurt, my hands were nicked up from a stubborn alternator job, and all I could think about was how good it would feel to peel off my boots, crack open a beer, and hear Tyler tell me about whatever chaos happened in 4th grade that day. Instead, I opened the door and stepped right into a storm I never saw coming. Beth was standing in the kitchen, her arms crossed, a manila envelope on the counter like it was waiting to be opened in court. She didn't greet me, didn't even look up. Just stared past me like I was a piece of furniture she'd already decided to throw out. "Hey," I said cautiously, shrugging off my jacket. "Everything all right?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pushed the envelope across the counter without a word, like it might bite her if she held onto it too long. I looked at it for a second, then back at her. "What's this?" "I'm filing for divorce," she said, clear and clipped, like she'd practiced it 100 times. "The paperwork's already been drafted." My brain didn't register the words at first. I stood there, still halfway in my work boots, expecting her to say she was kidding, that it was some sick joke or a bluff, like during those fights we used to have in year 5 when she'd scream she was leaving but never packed a bag. But she wasn't bluffing this time. "I want the house," she continued, still calm, still cold. "And the car. Tyler will stay with me full-time. You'll need to pay support, obviously. My attorney is filing for full custody." I blinked, trying to find something to hold on to, logic, sanity, something solid to plant my feet on. But everything felt like it was cracking beneath me. "Wait, what?" I asked, stepping forward. "What the hell are you talking about, Beth? Where is this coming from?" She exhaled through her nose, not angry, just tired. Like I was some chore she was finishing up before bedtime. "Jake, come on. Don't act like you didn't see this coming. We've been circling the drain for years." "Circling the drain?" I repeated, stunned. "So your answer is just to throw me out? Take Tyler, take everything, and what, act like I was never here?" She finally looked at me, and that might have been worse than her silence. Her eyes were empty. Not angry, not sad, just done. "Jake," she said, like I was a child asking dumb questions. "I've been holding this together for too long. You're barely present. You come home, eat, sleep, and go back to the shop. I'm tired of feeling like I'm doing this alone." "Doing what alone?" I said, my voice cracking. "Raising our kid? Paying bills? You think I'm not trying? I bust my ass every day so we can keep this house." She shook her head like she didn't want to hear it. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I laughed. One of those dry, bitter laughs that doesn't have an ounce of humor in it. "Harder? You're telling me I'm losing my kid and my home, and you're worried about me making things harder?" She didn't respond. Just walked over to the dining table and sat down, like the conversation was over. Like she just canceled a cable subscription, not a decade-long marriage. I stood there in the doorway, my heart racing, my hands still black with grease. Tyler's backpack was on the floor by the stairs, one of his shoes tipped over like he'd kicked it off on his way to the TV. A Lego lay abandoned on the rug, probably from that Star Wars set we worked on last weekend. I suddenly felt like a stranger in my own damn house. "Does Tyler know?" I asked quietly. "No," she said. "Not yet. I'm planning to tell him this weekend." "We're planning," I corrected her. "We tell him together." Beth looked at me like I just suggested we go on vacation. "Jake, that's not how this is going to go. You're not staying here. I think it's best if you start looking for another place. I've already packed some of your things." I felt my chest tighten like someone had wrapped a belt around my ribs and started pulling. "You packed my stuff?" I whispered. "Like I'm some tenant you're evicting?" "I didn't mean it like that," she said, standing again. "But I think space is important right now." That word hit like a punch. She didn't say, separation. She didn't say, let's talk to someone. She went straight to divorce, and custody, and I packed your things. What the hell happened to us? I asked, more to myself than to her. How did we get here? Beth rubbed her arms like the conversation had made her cold. We stopped trying, Jake. Somewhere along the line, we became roommates with a kid. I just finally decided to stop pretending. I felt like I was on fire, but numb at the same time. So this is it? After everything, 10 years, you just hand me a folder and tell me to leave. She didn't even flinch. Yes. I looked at her, the woman I used to wake up next to, the woman I thought I'd grow old with, and I didn't recognize her anymore. Whatever spark we'd had, whatever thread had tied us together, it had been cut, and I hadn't even seen the scissors coming. I didn't touch the envelope. I just walked past it, past her, into the hallway toward Tyler's room. I cracked the door open and watched him sleeping, his mouth open slightly, one hand clutched around a stuffed dinosaur. My throat burned, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from breaking down right there. I wasn't going to let her take him from me without a fight. Not now. Not ever. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a minute. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling while the house creaked and sighed around me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tyler's face. I thought about how he'd smile when he saw me pick him up from school. How he'd run toward me with his backpack bouncing on his shoulders, asking if we could stop for ice cream, or how his eyes would light up when I helped him build that ridiculous Lego roller coaster that kept falling apart. How was I supposed to just walk away from that? Hand him over like a set of car keys because Beth decided she was done? At some point, maybe around 4 a.m., I grabbed my phone and called the only person I could think of, Mike. He and I had been friends since we were kids. Played backyard football, got drunk in his parents' basement when we were too young to know any better. He was a lawyer now, family law, ironically. I hadn't talked to him in months, not really. We drifted a bit after college, but he picked up on the second ring. "Jake," he said, groggy but alert. "You all right?" "No," I said, voice rough. "Beth hit me with divorce papers." Silence for a moment. Then, "Shit. You want me to come over?" "Nah," I said, rubbing my face. I don't know what to do. She's going for full custody. She already packed my stuff like I'm being evicted." He let out a low whistle. "Damn it. That's brutal." I told him everything. About how it came out of nowhere. About Tyler. About the house, the car, the way Beth had looked at me like I was nothing but a loose end. Mike listened without interrupting, then finally said, "First thing, don't sign anything. Not a single page. You hear me?" "I haven't," I said. "Good." "Second, she's going to play this like she's already won. That's textbook. Hit you hard and fast, get you out before you can react. But you've got rights. Especially if you've been involved with Tyler's life this whole time." "I've been there since day one," I said quietly. "School pickups, dentist appointments, everything." "Then fight," Mike said. "Don't roll over. I'll help you. It's not going to be easy. Courts lean toward moms, especially if the kid lives with them. But we can build something." His voice steadied me just a little. Gave me a thread to grab onto while the rest of my life unraveled. We made a plan. He'd get the ball rolling on filing a response, maybe push for joint custody, at least get some visitation locked in. When I finally hung up, the sun was starting to rise. I sat in the living room, watching the light spill across the floor, and tried not to lose it. I didn't know where I was supposed to go, or how I was going to pay for a lawyer on a mechanic's salary, or what Tyler was going to think when I wasn't around every day. I just knew I had to fight. By the time Beth came downstairs, dressed in her workout clothes like nothing had happened, I was already showered and dressed. She gave me a look, surprised I hadn't left, maybe, or annoyed that I was still in her kitchen. "I talked to Mike," I said. "I'm not signing anything." She paused by the fridge, hand on the handle. "You're just going to make this harder for everyone." "You think that's what this is about?" I said, my voice low. "Making things easier? You blindsided me, Beth. You planned this. You went behind my back, got a lawyer, filled out forms, packed my stuff. And now I'm supposed to roll over and let you take my son." Her eyes flashed for a second, something sharp and defensive, but she didn't argue. She just said, "We're not doing this right now. Not in front of Tyler." "Damn right we're not," I snapped. "Because I'm not leaving. Not until a judge tells me I have to." That was the moment things shifted. Before, she had been icy, distant, like I was someone she had to manage. But now, Her posture stiffened, her tone changed. She looked at me like I was a threat. "You really want to make this ugly?" she asked, her voice low. "I'm not trying to make anything," I said. "I'm trying to be a father." She didn't answer. Just walked out the back door with her water bottle and yoga mat like we weren't in the middle of a war. The next few days were hell. Pure, relentless hell. She stopped talking to me unless it was about logistics. Every word was clipped, emotionless. "Tyler has soccer practice. Can you pick up groceries?" Like I was a roommate she regretted bringing in. She started undermining me in front of Tyler, too. If I asked him to brush his teeth, she'd jump in with, "You already did that, right, honey?" If I told him we were going to the park, she'd say, "Actually, we have other plans." Always in front of him. Always smiling, like she was being helpful. I started to feel invisible in my own house. No, worse than invisible. Like an intruder. I knew what she was doing. Mike warned me about it. "She's building a case," he said. "Trying to paint you as unstable, uninvolved, maybe even aggressive. Don't give her anything to work with." So I kept my cool. No yelling. No slamming doors. I bit my tongue so hard some nights I tasted blood. One night, after putting Tyler to bed, I found my duffel bag by the front door. Neatly packed. My shaving kit, socks, jeans, 2 hoodies. She didn't say a word about it, just left it there like an eviction notice. Message received. I picked it up and put it back in the closet. The next morning, she doubled down. "You can't stay here forever," she said over coffee, not even looking up from her phone. "It's not healthy." "For who?" I asked. "For Tyler. That one nearly broke me. Using him like that. Twisting the knife." I set down my mug before I shattered it in my hand. "He needs stability," she added. "You sleeping on the couch, isn't it?" "Then I'll sleep in my truck," I said. "But I'm not leaving him." She didn't reply. Just took a sip of her coffee and scrolled. Later that week, I got a call from the shop manager. He'd noticed I'd been off my game, slipping up, distracted. A customer had come back complaining about a botched brake job, and that was enough for him. "Jake, I'm sorry, man," he said. "You're good at what you do, but with everything going on, I think it's best we part ways." I stood outside the shop afterward, holding a cardboard box with my tools, trying not to fall apart. No job. No stability. No idea how I was going to make the next month's rent, let alone pay a lawyer or child support. And Beth? She wasted no time. 3 days later, I got a letter from the county court, notice of a child support claim. The ink was barely dry on my termination papers, and she'd already filed. He cursed under his breath and told me to hang tight, that we'd respond, but the damage was done. I was sinking. And I hadn't even hit the bottom yet. I didn't think things could get worse. But they did. A week after I lost my job, I woke up to pounding on the door of my cousin's apartment. I'd been crashing there since Beth made it impossible to stay in the house, sleeping on a futon wedged between boxes of old DVDs and a broken guitar he kept saying he'd fix. It was a rough setup, but at least I could breathe. That morning, the knock wasn't polite. It was loud. Demanding. My cousin, Pete, was still passed out from a late shift, so I answered it, groggy and still half-dressed. 2 uniformed officers stood in the hallway. I blinked at them, thinking maybe they had the wrong place. "Jake Lawson?" the taller one asked. "Yeah," I said, already feeling the pit forming in my stomach. "You're under arrest for failure to pay child support," he said like he was reading off a grocery list. I just stared at him. "What? That's gotta be a mistake. I just lost my job last week. I haven't even missed a payment yet." The other officer pulled out the paperwork. "Says here you missed your first installment. The court processed it yesterday. It's a civil contempt order." It felt like the floor gave out beneath me. I tried to explain, told them I'd been laid off, that my lawyer was filing a response, that I hadn't even had a hearing yet. None of it mattered. They cuffed me right there in the hallway while Pete stumbled out of his room, rubbing his eyes and mumbling, "Dude, what the hell is going on?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was too busy trying to figure out how everything had fallen apart so fast. Jail wasn't violent, like in the movies. It was worse in a quieter way. The stink of sweat and bleach, The constant noise, the feeling that time didn't move. You slept with your back to the wall, ate food that tasted like cardboard, and kept your head down. I wasn't built for it, wasn't the tough guy type, but I held it together the best I could. The worst part? The silence. No calls from Tyler. No word from Mike. No clue what was happening outside those walls. I kept thinking about how Beth probably spun it all, telling everyone I'd run out, abandoned my kid, that I was unstable or dangerous. She always had a talent for twisting things to make herself the victim. 10 days in, I got a letter. It was handed to me by one of the guards, no return address, just my name in blocky handwriting. For a second, I thought maybe it was from Beth, or even Mike with some legal update. But when I opened it, my heart dropped. It was from Travis. Travis had been one of my closest friends. He'd been at our wedding, helped build Tyler's crib, came to every birthday party for the first 5 years. We drifted when he moved to another town for work, but he was always someone I considered loyal. The letter was short, full of guilt. I should have told you sooner. I should have told you years ago. But I didn't know how. I didn't want to be the one to blow it all up. Beth's been cheating on you for a long time. With a guy named Brandon. She met him before Tyler was born. I don't think Tyler is yours. I had to sit down. I couldn't breathe. He went on to say he'd kept quiet because he thought it was over, thought it was just a phase. But he saw them together again a few months ago. Said he couldn't live with it anymore. He ended the letter with, "Get a paternity test. You deserve the truth." I read that letter probably 10 times in a row. Every time I thought I'd cry, I didn't. I just went numb. Completely hollowed out. I started going back through memories like flipping through an old photo album, only now everything looked different. The sudden weekend trips Beth used to take when Tyler was still in diapers. The quiet phone calls late at night. Her insisting Tyler had her dad's eyes when I used to say he didn't really look like either of us. All of it came rushing back, but this time through a different lens. It made me sick. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat on the edge of the bunk, the letter folded in my hands, trying to piece together what was real and what had been a lie. 10 years of believing I was a father. Of doing everything right, or trying to. Changing diapers, staying up with him when he had fevers, helping with homework. How could that not count? How could it be possible? The next morning, I asked for a phone call. Mike picked up, groggy. "Jake? You all right?" "No," I said. "I need a paternity test." He was quiet for a moment. "Why?" I told him about the letter. About Travis. About Brandon. "Jesus," he muttered. "When you're out, we'll get it done." "When will that be?" "I'm working on it," he said. "Hang in there." The next 10 days crawled by. I didn't say much to anyone. I just kept my head down and replayed every moment of my marriage over and over again like some twisted greatest hits compilation. Beth, smiling at me in the delivery room. Me teaching Tyler to ride a bike. Our first family vacation. All of it cracked now. Fragile. When I was finally released, the world felt too bright. Pete was waiting for me outside, holding a garbage bag with my clothes in it and a warm coffee. I nodded my thanks and climbed into his beat-up truck. "You look like shit," he said. "Feel worse." I didn't go to Beth's. I didn't go to see Tyler. Not yet. I needed time to breathe. I needed to get answers. Mike had already started the process. He'd filed a motion for court-ordered paternity testing, and the judge had approved it. Apparently, Beth tried to fight it, but the court wasn't buying it. Once it was official, she was legally required to comply. It was the first one I'd had in weeks. The clinic was cold, clinical, like everything else in my life lately. When I saw Tyler, my stomach clenched. He looked up from his seat and his face lit up. "Dad!" I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for how much I still loved him, how nothing about that moment felt wrong, even knowing what might come next. He ran into my arms and hugged me like nothing had changed. But everything had. I looked over his head at Beth. She stood near the reception desk, arms crossed, jaw tight. She didn't say anything. Didn't smile. Just waited for it to be over. We did the swabs. Tyler was all smiles, cracking jokes with the nurse, completely unaware that his entire world might be tilting off its axis. I hated myself for dragging him into it, but I had to know. I needed the truth, even if it broke me. Even if it broke him. Afterward, I took Tyler out for ice cream. Beth didn't protest, probably because it would have looked bad if she had. We sat on a bench outside the parlor, him with a chocolate cone already melting down his fingers, me trying to keep my hands from shaking. "You okay, Dad?" he asked between bites. I nodded. Forced a smile. "Yeah, buddy. Just tired." He leaned against me and sighed. "I missed you." I felt something crack inside me. If he wasn't mine, I didn't know what I'd do. But no matter what the test said, I already knew one thing for sure. He was my son. He had to be. The results came in 2 weeks later. I remember the exact moment because I was sitting in Pete's apartment, eating cereal straight from the box, the TV muttering in the background. I wasn't even watching it, just needed noise to fill the space. My phone buzzed. It was Mike. "Hey," he said, voice a little softer than usual. "You sitting down?" I didn't say anything. Just braced myself. "They're in. I've got the report right here." I didn't breathe. Couldn't. I already knew what he was going to say. "You're not the biological father." It didn't feel real. It was like my brain shut off halfway through the sentence. The air got thick, heavy, like the room had tilted sideways. I stood up, cereal spilling onto the carpet, and just paced in a circle. "No chance of a lab mistake?" I asked, desperate for something, anything, to poke a hole in this. "No. It's conclusive, Jake. There's no way." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I felt like the floor had fallen out from under me, but I was still standing, still breathing somehow, even though every part of me screamed. Mike spoke again, carefully, like he wasn't sure what version of me he was talking to. "I already filed the fraud petition. With the test results, we've got grounds." Fraud. It was such a cold word for what this felt like. I wasn't even sure what part hurt the most, the betrayal, the lies, or the fact that the boy I'd called my son for 10 years, legally, genetically wasn't. But I didn't cry. Not right away. I sat back down on that beat-up couch and just stared at the wall while Mike went over next steps, court dates, filings, evidence. It was all a blur. Paperwork and legal jargon while the foundation of my life was still sinking. It wasn't until later that night, alone, when Pete had gone to work and the apartment was dead quiet, that the dam finally broke. I sat on that same couch and sobbed like a kid. Not the tough, angry kind of crying this was raw, broken, from-the-gut crying. I buried my face in a throw pillow to muffle the sound and let it pour out of me. 10 years. 10 damn years of birthdays and bedtime stories, of holding him through nightmares and cheering from the sidelines. And it was all built on a lie. But even then, through all of it, I couldn't bring myself to hate Tyler. He was innocent in all of this. None of it was his fault. He didn't choose who his mother was. And somehow, that made it worse. Because I couldn't walk away. When the court date came, I wore the one suit I owned. Pete lent me his truck and wished me luck. The courthouse was freezing and smelled like paper and old coffee. I sat across from Beth and her attorney, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Beth didn't look at me. Not once. She kept her eyes forward, face blank. Mike laid it all out. Timeline, evidence, the DNA test, emails Travis had forwarded. Beth's financial records showed she'd accepted child support under false pretenses, all while knowing Brandon was Tyler's real father. Her lawyer tried to spin it, of course, talked about uncertainty, how she was confused back then, how she thought I might be the father. It was pathetic. The judge didn't buy it. Her voice was firm, no nonsense. She called it what it was, fraud. Cold, calculated deception. She ruled in our favor, ordered Beth to repay a portion of the support I'd paid over the years, and gave her a suspended sentence. 2 years, hanging over her head if she pulled something like this again. But that wasn't the part that mattered. The judge looked at me near the end of the hearing and said, "Given the circumstances and the absence of the biological father, temporary custody will remain with Mr. Lawson pending further review." Beth's mouth actually fell open. I don't think she'd ever imagined I'd walk out of that courtroom with custody, even temporarily. She probably figured I'd fall apart, disappear. But I hadn't. I was still standing. Brandon, it turned out, wanted nothing to do with Tyler. When we tracked him down, he denied it at first. Then when the court asked if he intended to pursue paternity or custody, he basically shrugged. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. Beth lost it after that. Filed another motion, this time from a rehab facility she'd checked into after the fraud ruling. Claimed stress. Depression. Said she'd been manipulated and deserved another chance. We had a virtual hearing. I sat in Pete's living room with a laptop in front of me while Beth cried on screen and told the judge she was coerced into lying. That she was the victim now. The judge listened. Patient. Then shut it down in under 10 minutes. Until you complete your sentence and demonstrate fitness as a parent, your motion is denied. Custody remains with Mr. Lawson. Beth's face twisted when she realized the judge was serious. The screen cut out seconds later, but the image of her looking stunned and powerless stayed with me. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like surviving a disaster. Like crawling out of the wreckage of a crash and realizing your legs still work, but nothing else does. The next morning, I picked up Tyler from school. He didn't know about the court case, the DNA, any of it. He just saw me standing by the gate and ran into my arms like everything was normal. Like his world hadn't been turned upside down behind the scenes. "Are we going to the park today?" he asked, grinning. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, we are." He reached up and grabbed my hand, and we walked to the truck together. I looked down at him and realized something. I might not be his biological father, but I was still his dad. And no court, no piece of paper, no twisted betrayal could ever change that.